Hi, I'm Haley. I used to believe family meant safety, love, a place to belong. But that belief ended the day my parents told me to grab a soda at a park in Portland and then drove away without looking back. I was 14. They called it teaching me a lesson. They never came back. 19 years later, they showed up not to say sorry, not because they missed me, but because they needed something. When I refused, they tried to destroy everything I had built. But I've learned something they didn't expect. Sometimes surviving is the best revenge. I was 14 the day my parents left me at Forest Hill Park in Portland. They said it was just a quick stop, that they needed me to grab some water from the vendor by the fountain. It was warm that day, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer above the pavement, and I could still hear the hum of cicadas mixing with the laughter of kids playing nearby. Lily, my 12-year-old sister, sat in the back seat next to me, clutching her small backpack. She glanced at me, eyes wide and glassy, before turning her face toward the window. Dad's voice came sharp from the front seat. "Haley, grab us some water, would you?" Mom didn't turn around. She was scrolling on her phone, her mouth pulled tight the way it always was when she was about to snap at me. I stepped out of the car, closing the door softly behind me. The sun pressed down on my shoulders as I walked toward the vending cart, pulling a crumpled $5 bill from my pocket. I could feel their eyes on me, but when I turned to look, they were gone. The space where the car had been was empty, the tire marks already fading on the hot pavement. For a moment, I stood there clutching the warm bottles of water I had bought, the plastic cold against my sweating palms. I scanned the parking lot, expecting them to have parked somewhere else, maybe around the corner. Maybe Dad had gone to find a bathroom, or Mom was grabbing a coffee. That made sense, I told myself. Minutes passed. I shifted from one foot to the other, looking at the families gathered around picnic tables, the children running across the grass, the couples laughing as they laid out blankets for lunch. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't had breakfast, and the soda I had bought for Dad was getting warmer in my hand. I sat down on a nearby bench, the wood hot beneath my legs, my eyes fixed on the entrance of the parking lot. Every car that turned in made my heart jump, only for it to sink when it wasn't them. I checked the time on my phone: 15 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. The sunlight began to soften, shadows lengthening across the grass, and the laughter around me turned to quiet conversations as people began packing up to leave. I checked my phone again, but there was nothing. No messages, no missed calls, nothing from Mom or Dad, and not from Lily either. A cold knot formed in my stomach as I replayed the morning in my mind. Mom's silence, Dad's irritated sigh, the way Lily wouldn't look at me. I thought about how Dad's eyes never softened when he looked at me, how Mom's mouth always tightened before she spoke my name. I squeezed the bottles in my hands until the plastic crinkled. A breeze picked up, carrying the scent of cut grass and warm pavement. The shadows grew longer, the parking lot growing empty as cars drove away one by one. I realized I was alone, really alone, in the middle of a park full of strangers who didn't even know my name. I stood up, slowly looking around as the last family loaded into their minivan and drove away, leaving the parking lot silent except for the rustle of leaves above. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to wait longer, telling myself they would come back when they finished their joke. But deep inside, another part of me whispered that they weren't coming back. They had meant to leave me here, and no matter how long I waited, they wouldn't return. The sky was turning orange when I finally stood up from the bench, my legs stiff and shaky. I looked around, hoping to see Lily running toward me, maybe Dad's truck pulling up with Mom waving me over. But the lot stayed empty, and the people walking by didn't even glance in my direction. I walked toward the vending cart again, clutching the warm water bottles, not sure why I was even holding them anymore. The vendor, a young woman with tired eyes, glanced at me as she packed up. I opened my mouth to say something, but no words came out. She gave me a small, awkward smile before looking away, and I felt my face burn with shame. A group of teenagers passed by, laughing and shoving each other, holding ice cream cones that dripped down their hands. One of them looked at me, then looked away just as fast, and I felt like I was invisible, standing there with the heat pressing down on me and sweat sticking my hair to my neck. My stomach cramped, reminding me again that I hadn't eaten since last night. I opened the bottle of water, taking a slow sip, hoping it would quiet the hunger. It didn't. I walked to a small patch of grass under a tree and sat down, hugging my knees to my chest. The The voices of families leaving the park faded, replaced by the distant hum of traffic. I pulled my phone from my pocket, checking it again, but there were no new messages. I thought about calling, but I knew it would go straight to voicemail. I set the bottles down and pressed my forehead to my knees, trying to breathe. Images of Lily's eyes, red and scared, flashed in my mind. I wondered if she had tried to stop them, if she had begged them to turn around, or if she had just stayed quiet like she always did, too afraid to speak. I heard the crunch of footsteps on gravel, but I didn't lift my head. I didn't want to see another family laughing together, packing up to go home. I didn't want to see the looks people gave a girl sitting alone in a park as the sky darkened. Then the footsteps stopped in front of me. "Haley, what are you doing out here all alone?" I froze, my breath caught in my chest. The voice was deep, warm, and familiar, like a blanket on a cold night. I slowly lifted my head and blinked against the fading light. Mr. Howard stood there wearing his old flannel shirt, holding a grocery bag in one hand. His gray hair was messy and his eyes were tired, but they softened when he looked at me. For a second I thought I might start crying, but nothing came out. He looked around the empty park, then back at me. "Where's your family, honey?" I opened my mouth, but the words got stuck. I felt my lips tremble as I tried to speak, and then I just shook my head, a tear slipping down my cheek. Mr. Howard's face changed, something hardening in his jaw. He set the bag down and crouched in front of me, looking me in the eyes. "Did they leave you here, Haley?" I swallowed, trying to find my voice. "They told me to get water," I whispered, "and then they left." He let out a slow breath, glancing at the parking lot, now empty except for a few cars far away. "How long have you been waiting?" I looked down at my hands, picking at the plastic label on the bottle. "A while." He nodded slowly, standing up with a groan, then held out his hand to me. "Come on, kiddo. Let's get you somewhere safe." I stared at his hand, my mind screaming that I should stay, that they would come back, that if I left now I would be in more trouble. But another part of me, the part that had whispered they weren't coming back, told me to take his hand. I reached out, my fingers wrapping around his rough, warm hand, and he helped me stand. My legs felt weak, and for a moment I thought I might fall, but he held my arm, steadying me. He picked up the grocery bag, then glanced down at me. "You hungry?" I nodded, my throat tight, unable to say the word out loud. "All right," he said, his voice soft, but there was something firm beneath it, something that made me feel like maybe I wasn't completely alone. "Let's get you something to eat, Haley." We walked away from the tree, the park growing darker behind us as the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving streaks of purple and gold in the sky. As we reached the edge of the park, I turned for one last look, hoping to see our old truck, hoping to see Lily's face pressed to the window. But there was nothing, just empty parking spaces and the cold wind blowing through the trees. I turned back to Mr. Howard as the wind pushed my hair across my face. He looked at me with a quiet concern that made my chest hurt, like he could see every piece of fear I was trying to hide. "Let's sit for a minute, Haley," he said, pointing to a bench near the path. We sat down, the wood cold under my legs, and he pulled a sandwich from his grocery bag wrapped in wax paper. He handed it to me without a word, and I took it, unwrapping it slowly as if I wasn't sure it was really for me. My hands shook as I brought it to my mouth, the smell of bread and turkey making my stomach twist with hunger. I took a small bite, then another, and before I knew it, half of it was gone. I wiped at my mouth with the back of my hand, embarrassed by how fast I had eaten. Mr. Howard pulled out a bottle of water and placed it beside me. "Slow down, kiddo. You're safe now, all right," I nodded, but the words didn't feel real. Safe wasn't something I knew how to believe in anymore. He leaned back, letting out a slow breath as he looked out at the park, now empty except for a few people jogging along the trail. "I saw your dad's truck leaving this afternoon," he said, his voice low. "Saw your mama staring out the window and Lily in the back seat looking back." My throat tightened and I stared down at my shoes, scuffed and dusty from the day. "They're not coming back, are they?" I whispered. He was quiet for a moment before he answered. "I don't think so, Haley." I pressed my lips together, fighting the tears burning in my eyes. "I don't want to go back," I said, my voice cracking. "They'll just yell. Or hit me. Or worse." Mr. Howard nodded, not surprised. "I've seen the way they treat you and Lily. The way you two would sit on the porch in the cold when they locked you out for the night. I wanted to step in so many times." I looked up at him, surprised tears slipping down my cheeks before I could stop them. They owe people money, I said, the words spilling out. Dad yells about it all the time. They fight about it at night, and Mom says they'll lose the house. He rubbed a hand over his tired face, shaking his head. That's not your fault, Haley. None of that is your fault. I swallowed my hands, gripping the edge of the bench. The streetlights flickered on, casting a yellow glow over the path. The park felt different now, quieter, like it was holding its breath. Mr. Howard looked at me, his eyes kind but serious. I can't let you go back there, not if it means you'll get hurt again. I glanced at him, fear and hope fighting in my chest. But where would I go? He let out a breath, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. I have a friend in Seattle. A good man and his wife. They run a small cafe and they've helped kids before. If you want, I can get you on a bus tonight, get you out of here before they realize you're gone. My breath caught. Seattle, I repeated the word, foreign and terrifying. I thought about Lily, about her small hands clutching her backpack, the way she looked at me from the back seat. I thought about Mom's cold eyes, Dad's angry voice. I looked down at the empty sandwich wrapper in my hands, my fingers trembling. I didn't know what the right choice was, but deep down I knew I couldn't go back. I couldn't live waiting for the next time they decided to leave me behind. Mr. Howard watched me carefully, letting me take the time I needed to breathe. The wrapper crackled in my hands as I folded it again and again, trying to quiet the shaking. He spoke softly, like he didn't want to scare me off. Haley, you don't have to go back to that house. I kept my eyes on my hands, blinking hard as tears threatened again. They'll come for me, I whispered. They'll take me back and I can't go back. Mr. Howard let out a slow breath, nodding. I know, kiddo. I've seen too much already. I've heard the yelling from across the fence, saw you and Lily sitting outside in the cold because they locked you out. I looked up at him, my voice small. They said it was to teach us a lesson. He shook his head, his jaw tight. That's not how you teach children anything. He leaned back on the bench, looking at the darkening sky. Your father has debts, Haley. Gambling debts. Everyone in the neighborhood knows it, but no one talks about it. I think that's part of why they treat you the way they do. His words sank into me, heavy and cold. I had heard Dad yelling about money late at night, but I never understood what it meant. I never knew that was why Mom looked so angry all the time. Mr. Howard turned to face me again, his eyes kind but serious. If you want, I can help you. I can get you a bus ticket tonight, get you somewhere safe before they even notice you're gone. My breath caught. Tonight. He nodded. Tonight. I stared at him, my chest rising and falling too quickly, my mind spinning. I thought about Lily, about leaving her alone with them, but I knew I couldn't help her if I was stuck there too. I knew I couldn't help her if I didn't save myself first. I pressed my hands to my eyes, wiping away the tears, then looked back at him. What about Lily? I asked, my voice breaking. What about my sister, Mr. Howard sighed, pain in his eyes. You can't take her with you right now, Haley. You're just 14 and it wouldn't be safe. But I promise you this, you get yourself safe, and one day you'll be in a place to help her too. A sob escaped my throat, but I nodded, clutching the empty wrapper like it was the only thing keeping me steady. I looked at him, my voice trembling but clear. I don't want to go back. I can't. He nodded again, reaching over to gently squeeze my shoulder. Good girl. He stood up, holding out his hand to me just like he did earlier. Come on, let's get you out of here. I'll call my friends in Seattle. They'll take care of you. I took his hand, standing on shaky legs. My mind was spinning with fear, guilt, and something that felt almost like hope. The park was empty now, the streetlights buzzing overhead, the shadows stretching long on the ground. As we walked toward his truck, I looked back one last time at the park bench, the place where I had waited for them to come back, knowing now they never would. I turned back to Mr. Howard, and as the wind caught the edge of my hair, I took a breath that felt like it reached all the way down to the parts of me that were still too scared to move. I want to leave, I whispered, my voice stronger this time. Forever. That night, Mr. Howard's old truck rattled down empty streets, the headlights cutting through the darkness as I held my backpack tight against my chest. The city looked different at night, like it was holding secrets in every shadow, and each passing streetlight felt like a countdown I couldn't stop. He glanced at me as he drove the soft glow from the dash lighting up his tired face. "You holding up okay, Haley?" I nodded, not trusting my voice, my fingers twisting in the strap of my backpack. I didn't have much in there, just a change of clothes, my toothbrush, and the small stuffed bear Lily had given me when I was 9. It still smelled like the lavender drawer sachet Mom used to keep in the dresser. We pulled up behind the Greyhound station, the sign buzzing faintly in the dark. The parking lot was almost empty, a few people sitting on benches with tired eyes holding their bags close like I was. Mr. Howard turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, the truck ticking as it cooled. "I talked to Thomas Foster," he said quietly. "He and Maria will meet you in Seattle. They're good people, Haley." I swallowed, blinking back the tears that threatened to rise again. "Thank you," I whispered. He reached over, placing a folded piece of paper in my hand. "This has their address and number. Keep it safe, all right?" I nodded, tucking it into the small front pocket of my jeans, feeling it press against my leg like a promise. He got out, grabbed my backpack, and handed it to me once I stepped onto the pavement. The air was cold, and I pulled my hoodie tighter around me as we walked toward the entrance. The sliding doors opened with a hiss, the smell of old coffee and cleaning supplies hitting me as we stepped inside. The woman at the counter looked up, her eyes, tired but kind, as Mr. Howard handed her some bills. She printed a ticket, sliding it across to him, and he handed it to me. It was warm from his hand as I took it, reading the words Seattle printed in bold letters across the top. He crouched down so he was eye level with me, his eyes soft but serious. "You're going to be okay, Haley. You're braver than you think." I tried to smile, but it came out crooked. "I'm scared," I admitted. "That's okay," he said, patting my shoulder gently. "Being scared just means you're about to do something really brave." I hugged him, then my arms wrapping around his shoulders, the scent of soap and old flannel grounding me for a moment. He hugged me back, firm and steady, and for a second I let myself believe that maybe I could be safe. When the announcement came for boarding, he walked me to the bus, staying close as I climbed the steps. I turned back, looking at him, standing there under the yellow light, his hands shoved in his jacket pockets. "Take care of yourself, Haley," he called softly. I nodded, holding the ticket tight in my hand as I moved down the aisle, finding a window seat near the middle. I pressed my backpack against the window, resting my head on it, watching as the driver loaded the last bags. Outside, Mr. Howard lifted a hand in a small wave. I pressed my hand against the glass, wishing for a moment that Lily was there beside me, wishing I could take her with me. The bus rumbled to life, the engine loud in the quiet night, and I felt it under my feet as it pulled away from the station. I turned to watch as Mr. Howard grew smaller, the lights of the station blurring as tears filled my eyes. I turned back to the window, watching the city lights slip past each street and building, fading into the darkness as we drove further away. I felt the fear sitting heavy in my chest, but under it was something else too. A small spark of hope whispering that maybe, just maybe, I could find something better on the other side of this night. The bus hummed as it rolled onto the highway, the lights of Portland shrinking behind us until there was only darkness and the soft glow of street lamps passing like ghosts. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass, breathing slowly, trying to calm the fear pulsing in my chest. Every bump in the road made my backpack shift against my leg, reminding me of how little I had, how small I felt, leaving everything I'd ever known. I hugged my arms around myself, pulling my knees up, wishing Lily's small hand was in mine, wishing I could have said goodbye. The man across the aisle was snoring, his head tilted back, while a woman in front of me quietly sang to a baby wrapped in a blanket. Their lives felt so far away from mine, and for a moment I wondered if I would ever feel normal again. The bus slowed at a red light, and I caught sight of a street I recognized. My heart twisted, remembering how Dad used to drive us down that road, yelling at me for asking too many questions, Lily shrinking into the corner of her seat to disappear. I wiped my eyes and looked down at my lap at the bus ticket still clutched in my hand, the ink smudged from sweat and tears. My thumb brushed over the word Seattle, and I let the word settle into my bones, a promise of something new. Then, without thinking, I pulled the cord above me, the bell dinging as the driver glanced at me in the mirror. "You getting off here, kid?" his voice rumbled, tired but not unkind. I nodded, standing up as the bus pulled to the curb. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to step off, the cold night air hitting me as the doors hissed shut behind me. I stood on the sidewalk the bus driving away and stared at the dark street. I was only a block away from home. I knew every crack in the pavement, every tree that lined the road. I knew how to step around the loose boards on the porch so they wouldn't creak. I needed to see Lily one last time. I crept through the shadows, moving quietly, my shoes barely making a sound. The house was dark, only the porch light flickering above the front steps. I slipped around the side, pushing the gate open just enough to squeeze through, careful not to let it slam. The window to Lily's room was cracked open, the curtains swaying gently. I could hear her soft breathing, the steady rhythm that had always calmed me when I couldn't sleep. I climbed up the crates stacked by the wall, pulling myself up to peek inside. She was there, curled up under the thin blanket, clutching the small rabbit plush I had given her on her 7th birthday. Her face looked peaceful in sleep, but I could see the tear tracks dried on her cheeks. I pulled the folded piece of paper from my pocket, the one I had written in Mr. Howard's truck. My hands shook as I pushed the curtain aside and slipped the note under her pillow, tucking it in so she would find it in the morning. Dear Lily, I had written, I'm leaving, but I will come back for you. I promise. I watched her for a moment longer, memorizing the way her hair fell across her face, the way she breathed, the small sounds she made in her sleep. I pressed my fingers to the glass, wishing I could stay but knowing I couldn't. I climbed down slowly, slipping back through the gate, the night air cold and sharp in my lungs. I walked back to the main road, my feet heavy but my steps steady. The next bus came an hour later, its headlights cutting through the dark. I climbed on, handing the driver my crumpled ticket, and found a seat by the window again. As the bus pulled away, I looked back once more, seeing the glow of the streetlight near our house fade into the distance. I pressed the ticket to my chest, whispering into the night, I promise, Lily. I'll come back. When I arrived in Seattle, the air felt different, crisp and cold, carrying the scent of rain and salt from the bay. I stepped off the bus with $12 in my pocket, a backpack that felt too light, and a promise burning in my chest. People moved around me in a rush, pulling bags and hugging loved ones, and for a moment I stood frozen, clutching the straps of my backpack, unsure of where to go next. Then I saw them. A tall man with kind eyes holding a cardboard sign with my name written in block letters. Beside him stood a woman with a soft smile, her hair tied back, her hands tucked into her jacket pockets. Haley, the man called, stepping forward. I nodded, swallowing hard, trying to find my voice. Yes, sir. He smiled, extending his hand. I'm Thomas Foster. This is my wife, Maria. Maria stepped forward, pulling me into a gentle hug that smelled like cinnamon and coffee. I stiffened at first, not used to hugs that didn't come with conditions, but she didn't let go until I relaxed. Welcome to Seattle, sweetheart, she said softly. Thomas grabbed my backpack and we walked to their old blue truck parked near the curb. The city lights glowed around us, but inside the truck, it felt warm, the soft hum of the engine filling the silence as we drove. I watched the city pass by through the window, the neon lights of diners and the dark shapes of buildings slipping away as we turned onto quieter streets. Maria turned in her seat, looking at me with a warm smile. We own a little cafe just a few blocks from where we live, she said. You'll like it there. Thomas nodded. You're welcome to stay with us, Haley. For as long as you need. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back, nodding. Thank you. When we pulled up to their house, it was a small 2-story place with flower boxes under the windows and a porch light that lit up the steps. Thomas carried my backpack up the stairs, showing me a small room in the attic with a bed tucked under the slanted ceiling. The blankets were clean, a small lamp glowed on the nightstand, and a folded sweater lay at the end of the bed waiting for me. I set my backpack down and stood in the middle of the room, breathing in the scent of soap and old wood. It was the first place that felt safe in as long as I could remember. Maria knocked softly before stepping in, holding a steaming mug. Warm milk with honey, she said, placing it on the nightstand. It'll help you sleep. I tried to thank her, but my voice cracked, so I just nodded. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face before leaving me alone. I sat on the bed, wrapping my hands around the warm mug, letting the steam rise against my face as I listened to the quiet sounds of the house. For the first time, I didn't feel like I needed to keep one ear open for yelling or footsteps. I didn't feel like I had to hide or shrink myself to stay safe. I finished the milk, set the mug down, and crawled under the covers, pulling the blanket up to my chin as I closed my eyes. The promise I made to Lily echoed in my mind, but for that moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I was somewhere I could finally breathe. The next morning, the smell of coffee and warm bread pulled me from sleep. I blinked, the soft light streaming through the small attic window, and for a second I forgot where I was. Then it came back, and a wave of fear and relief washed over me at the same time. I slipped out of bed, pulling the sweater Maria had left me over my head. It was soft, smelling faintly of soap and cinnamon. My bare feet were quiet on the wooden stairs as I made my way down to the kitchen. Maria stood at the counter, her hair tied up, humming softly as she pulled muffins from the oven. Thomas sat at the table reading a newspaper, a steaming cup of coffee in front of him. Maria turned when she saw me, her face breaking into a warm smile. "Morning, Haley." "Hungry?" I nodded, my voice caught in my throat. She placed a warm blueberry muffin in my hands, the berries staining my fingertips as I took a bite. The sweetness and warmth spread through me, chasing away the cold that had lived in my chest for too long. Thomas looked up, folding his paper. "How did you sleep?" I swallowed, wiping my mouth. "Good. Thank you." He nodded, a small smile touching his lips. "We're glad you're here." After breakfast, Maria showed me how to fold napkins and wipe down tables at their cafe, a small place with checkered floors and mismatched chairs that somehow felt like home. I washed dishes, stacked plates, and poured water for customers, my hands moving with quiet purpose. During breaks, Maria would sit beside me, asking about school, about the things I liked, never pushing when I couldn't find the words. Some days the fear would sneak back in the memory of Lily's face or Dad's yelling, making my hands shake as I dried the glasses. Maria would notice, wrapping her arm around my shoulders. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe here." At night, I lay in the attic bed listening to the rain tapping against the window, writing in the small notebook Maria had given me. I wrote about the cafe, about the smell of fresh bread, about the kindness in Maria's eyes, and the quiet strength in Thomas's voice. And always I wrote about Lily. Months passed and they enrolled me in school again. I was terrified the first day, standing at the edge of the hallway, clutching my backpack, afraid someone would look at me and see all the things I was trying to hide. But when I got home that afternoon, Maria was waiting with hot chocolate, listening as I stumbled through stories of the day, nodding, telling me she was proud. Thomas taught me how to fix the leaky faucet in the cafe's bathroom, showing me how to turn the wrench, how to find the right angle. He let me help repaint the walls yellow and warm, the color Maria liked best. I felt the fear in me slowly loosen, replaced by something softer, something like hope. Years passed. I grew taller, my hair longer, my voice stronger. I worked in the cafe before and after school, saving every dollar I could. Maria would hug me on the days I cried for Lily, whispering that one day I would keep my promise. In my final year of high school, I met Clara Bennett. She came into the cafe on a rainy afternoon, ordering coffee and sitting in the corner with a stack of papers. We talked slowly at first, and when she learned I wanted to go to college, she offered to help me apply for scholarships. Clara, with her sharp eyes and kind smile, told me I could be anything I wanted, that my past didn't have to decide who I would become. On the day I received my acceptance letter, Maria and Thomas stood on either side of me, tears in their eyes, as I read the words out loud, my hands shaking. I was going to college. That night, I lay in bed, my journal open on my lap, the words pouring out in the glow of the lamp. "One day, Lily, I will come back for you. I promise." I fell asleep that night with my journal still open, the promise to Lily, the last thing I saw before my eyes closed. Years passed and life in Seattle moved forward like the tide, steady and relentless. I graduated high school, worked mornings at the cafe, studied late into the night, and earned a scholarship with Clara Bennett's help. College felt like another world, with halls full of people who didn't know the girl I used to be. I wore clean clothes, carried a backpack with working zippers, and pretended I was just like them. But every time I lay down at night, the promise I made to Lily whispered back to me. After college, I worked 2 jobs, scraping together savings until I had enough to start Evergreen Developments. One small house flip turned into 3, then a block of townhomes, then an entire neighborhood. My name began to mean something in Seattle, and for the first time I wasn't just surviving. I was building something. But the promise never left me. Sometimes late at night, I would sit on my balcony looking out over the lights of the city and wonder where Lily was, what her life looked like if she still slept clutching that small rabbit plush I once gave her. Guilt would creep in like a cold draft, reminding me I had left her behind, even if it was the only way I could have survived. Then one Tuesday morning, everything changed. The glass walls of my office caught the glow of sunrise, the city waking up below as I stood at the head of the conference table. My team was reviewing the plans for a new mixed-use building. Voices, steady, pointing out details on the digital blueprints displayed on the screen. My phone buzzed against the table once, then twice, then 3 times in quick succession. At first, I ignored it, forcing myself to focus on the numbers, the budget lines, the timelines. But the 4th buzz made me glance down. Unknown number. Something in me froze. My hand hovered over the phone, then I picked it up, turning slightly away as I swiped to read the message. Haley. It's me. It's Lily. My breath caught the letters swimming in my vision as the room around me blurred. Please, I need you. Please help me. I heard my name, someone asking for a confirmation on the numbers, but the words didn't land. The floor felt like it was tilting under me, the air too thin as I stared at the screen. I stepped back, pushing my chair away, the screech loud enough to silence the room. I need a minute. I said, my voice clipped before I turned and walked out, the door closing softly behind me. The hallway was quiet, the hum of the city outside muffled by the glass. I leaned against the wall, my fingers shaking as I held the phone, rereading the message until I couldn't breathe. Lily. I typed quickly. Is it really you? The dots appeared, flickering, disappearing, appearing again, and every second felt like it stretched into an hour. It's me. Please don't ignore me. My thumb hovered, then I typed, where are you? What's happening? The reply came fast. I'm still at the house. They won't let me leave. They're worse now. Dad's trying to force me to marry some guy he owes money to. They said it's the only way to pay their debts. A sharp breath ripped from my chest, my hand covering my mouth as I felt the sting of tears rising. My sister trapped in that house, still living in the fear I had escaped, paying for the mistakes of parents who never cared enough to protect us. Another message followed, the words shaking me to my core. I've been recording them, Haley. I've kept everything. I have pictures, audio journals. I remembered what you said in your letter. I remembered. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, tears slipping down my cheeks as I closed my eyes, the memory of her small face pressed against the car window. The promise I whispered to her the night I left. I opened my eyes, my reflection staring back at me, older, stronger, but the fear still there, mingling with something fiercer, something that felt like fire. My fingers moved quickly as I typed, Lily, I'm coming for you. I promise. Lily's reply came instantly. Don't let them know. Please. I tightened my grip on the phone, forcing my breathing to steady as I typed, I won't. Are you safe right now? A moment passed before 3 dots appeared. They're out. At some bar. I have maybe 2 hours. 2 hours. 19 years apart, and now we had 2 hours to plan the rest of her life. Lily, tell me everything. Her messages came in fragments, like she was shaking as she typed. They're worse, Haley. Dad drinks all day. Yells, breaks things. Mom screams, says I'm worthless. They took my phone last week, checked my messages. I have to delete everything. I closed my eyes, pressing the heel of my hand against my forehead as her words stabbed through me. They want me to marry some guy. Dad owes him money. They said it's the only way to fix things. My stomach turned. Who is he? I don't know him. He's old. I heard them say he'll pay off Dad's debts if I agree. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. Did they hurt you sometimes? Not like before, just yelling, pushing, throwing things. I lock the door, but sometimes they get in. A tear slipped down my cheek as I typed, I'm so sorry, Lily. Another pause, then I kept your note. The one you left. It was under my pillow. I found it the day after you left. My breath caught the memory of that night sharp as glass in my mind. You still have it? Yes. I read it all the time. I thought you forgot about me. I pressed the phone to my chest for a moment, closing my eyes as the guilt and grief pressed down heavy and cold. I never forgot you. Never. I started recording them, Lily wrote. Everything. The fights. The threats. Mom saying they'd lose the house if I didn't do this. Dad saying I was the only way to fix it. I wrote everything down, took pictures. I hid it all. A spark of pride burned through the fear in my chest. You're so brave, Lily. Her next message came slower. I don't feel brave. You are, I typed back. You are the bravest person I know. The screen stayed quiet for a moment before lighting up again. What do I do, Haley? I don't want to be here anymore. I looked out at the Seattle skyline, the glass buildings reflecting the sinking sun. My reflection looked back at me, older, stronger, and suddenly I knew with perfect clarity what needed to happen. You're going to hold on, Lily, I typed. I'm going to come get you. We're going to end this. A pause then. Promise, I swallowed, my hands shaking. I promise. Just then a knock on the glass made me look up. Clara stood there, her dark eyes sharp as she studied my face. I slipped the phone into my pocket, wiping the tears quickly before stepping away from the window. Everything okay? She asked softly. I shook my head. Not yet. She nodded, her eyes narrowing. What do you need? I looked past her at the conference room. My team's voices muffled by the glass, the numbers and deals suddenly meaningless in this moment. I need to go back to Portland. I said, my voice calm, but inside I felt the fire rising. Clara's gaze didn't waver. Then go. For 19 years, I had built a life out of nothing, brick by brick, breath by breath, waiting for the moment I could keep the promise I made. Now it was time. I drove into Portland as the sun dipped low, the sky streaked with gold and bruised purple. Each mile closer, memories pressed against my ribs, but I kept my hand steady on the wheel. I turned down Maple Street, passing the small grocery store where Dad used to buy cheap beer, the cracked sidewalks. I walked 100 times with Lily, her small hand in mine. I pulled into the driveway of the small weathered house where Mr. Howard still lived. The porch light was already on even though it wasn't dark yet, and I saw him step onto the porch leaning heavily on his cane. When I stepped out, he smiled, lines deepening around his tired eyes. Haley. I swallowed hard before I moved forward, hugging him. Hi, Mr. Howard. He patted my back with a gentle firmness. Took you long enough, kid. I pulled back, wiping a tear quickly, and he nodded toward the house. She's waiting for you. My heart stumbled in my chest as I followed him inside, the warm scent of coffee and old wood grounding me. Lily sat at the kitchen table, her hair longer, face thinner, eyes wide and wet when they lifted to meet mine. Haley. I dropped my bag and crossed the room in 3 steps, pulling her into my arms. She sobbed against my shoulder, shaking her hands, clutching the back of my jacket like she was afraid I would disappear again. I'm here, I whispered, pressing my cheek to her hair. I'm here, Lily. We stood there holding on while Mr. Howard moved around us, making tea, giving us space. When we finally sat down, Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, her voice small. I thought I'd never see you again. I promised you, I said, squeezing her hand, and I'm going to keep that promise. She pulled a small box from her bag, opening it to reveal USB drives, notebooks, and a cracked phone. I kept everything. The recordings, the photos, the notes. Pride and pain twisted together in my chest as I took the box from her, setting it carefully on the table. You did so good, Lily. That night, I called Clara. She answered on the first ring, her voice sharp but warm. I've been waiting for your call. I need your help, I said. I'm on the next flight. By morning, Clara arrived, dark hair tied back, dressed in black slacks and a navy blazer. She shook Mr. Howard's hand firmly before sitting with Lily, speaking in a calm, even voice as she explained what we would need to do. We laid out the evidence on the table, photos of Bruce's audio files with Dad's drunken threats. Mom's screaming, the conversations about forcing Lily to marry a stranger to pay off debts. It's enough, Clara said, looking at me. It's more than enough. But we all knew what would come next. The morning after we filed the first injunction, Facebook posts began to appear, dripping with venom. Photos of me smiling at charity galas, twisted captions calling me an ungrateful daughter. Relatives I barely knew shared the posts calling me a liar, saying I had abandoned my family, that I was trying to destroy my parents for money. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications, each comment like a small blade. I stood in Mr. Howard's kitchen reading them, my hands trembling. Lily stood beside me, her eyes wide, reading the comments too. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I shook my head, closing the screen. "This isn't your fault." Clara looked up from the paperwork, her voice calm but firm. "Let them talk. We're going to show them the truth." Mr. Howard set a hand on Lily's shoulder, steady and warm. "You're safe now." Outside, the wind rattled the windows as I picked up the small box of evidence, holding it close to my chest. I felt the weight of it, the weight of 19 years pressing down and lifting at the same time. We were ready. We drove to the cafe that afternoon, the one with the creaky door and the mismatched chairs that smelled of cinnamon and coffee beans. Lily sat beside me in the passenger seat, her hands twisting in her lap, her eyes flicking to the window every few seconds. "They won't find us here," I said, keeping my voice calm. She nodded, but her foot tapped on the floor, fast and nervous. When we stepped inside, the warmth of the cafe wrapped around us, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of mugs, the soft hum of people talking. It was the same cafe I had scrubbed floors in years ago, dreaming of freedom, while Maria showed me how to fold napkins. I took Lily's hand and guided her to a corner booth. She hesitated before sitting, her eyes darting around, but I squeezed her hand gently. "Breathe," I whispered. She exhaled shakily and nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. The door opened and Clara walked in, a black coat over her navy suit, her eyes sharp as she scanned the room before finding us. She moved quickly, sliding into the booth across from us, her briefcase setting a soft thud on the table. "You have the files?" she asked. I nodded, pulling out the small box of USBs, journals, and the cracked phone, setting them on the table between us. Clara's fingers moved with practiced precision, checking labels, organizing piles. Lily watched her, hugging her arms to her chest. "Is this really going to work?" Clara looked up, her gaze steady. "It will. This is enough to file for a protective order and open an investigation. It's also enough to stop any forced marriage threats they've made." Lily's eyes filled with tears and she quickly wiped them away. "I don't want to be scared anymore." "You won't be," I said, reaching over to cover her hand with mine. "We're done being scared." As Clara explained the next steps, I saw Lily straighten her shoulders, her hands trembling less each minute, her eyes locking onto Clara's as she spoke about court dates, safe housing, and legal strategy. But it didn't take long for the storm to find us. That evening, my phone exploded with notifications, each buzz like a needle under my skin. I opened it, scrolling through Facebook posts littered with my name, photos of me taken from my old college page, captions calling me a liar, a thief, an ungrateful daughter. My parents' words were there, written in capital letters, claiming I had abandoned them, stolen from them, left them to suffer. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years shared the posts, aunts and uncles commenting, shaking their heads, calling me cold. Lily peeked over my shoulder, her face pale. "They're turning everyone against you." I locked the phone and set it down on the table, looking at her. "Let them. We have the truth." Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered, "I'm sorry they're saying those things." I reached over, cupping her cheek. "You have nothing to be sorry for." Clara's phone chimed and she checked it, her jaw tightening. "They're trying to force the narrative, but it won't hold. We have evidence. We will control the story." Mr. Howard stepped into the cafe carrying a grocery bag, his cane tapping softly against the floor. He sat beside Lily, giving her shoulder a comforting squeeze. "You girls aren't alone in this." I nodded, looking around at the people who had become family, the people who had kept me alive when I was Lily's age, who were now helping us reclaim everything they had tried to steal. I pulled Lily's phone from her bag, connecting it to my laptop. The files opened one by one, the recordings of Dad's threats. Mom's screams, the photographs of bruises, the screenshots of texts demanding Lily do as she was told. Lily sat beside me, her hand gripping my arm as we scrolled through each file, the evidence she had risked everything to collect. "Are you ready?" I asked, my finger hovering over the trackpad. Lily wiped her tears, her chin lifting, her eyes fierce for the first time in years. "Yes," she whispered. "It's time." I opened Facebook, the cursor blinking in the post box as I attached the files, the images, the audio, the timeline of every threat, every bruise, every promise they made to break her. I took a breath, my finger hovering for a single heartbeat. Then I pressed post. The notifications started instantly, a flood of buzzing that filled the room as the files loaded online. I watched the views climb from hundreds to thousands within minutes, comments appearing faster than I could read them. People shared the post with words like unbelievable and monsters, their outrage pouring through every sentence. Lily sat beside me, her hands pressed to her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks as she read the comments. "They believe us," she whispered. "They see you now," I said softly, keeping my eyes on the screen as the shares kept rising. Clips of Dad's voice echoed from the phone, speakers slurred, angry, yelling threats about how Lily would pay, how she was nothing, how he would lock her outside if she didn't obey. Mom's voice came next, cold and sharp, promising Lily she would ruin her if she didn't do what they wanted. Then the pictures, bruises on Lily's arms, her legs, the pale skin turned purple and blue. A photo of her standing in the snow at 13, wrapped in a thin sweater, her hair damp with frost, her eyes hollow. A comment popped up. "Who does this to their own child?" Another. "We need to protect Lily." News sites started picking up the post, screenshots of the files shared in articles titled, "Daughter exposes abusive parents, survivor speaks out, a sister's promise." Hashtags with Lily's name began trending, strangers offering support, lawyers commenting to offer help, therapists volunteering to assist Lily for free. Mr. Howard sat near the window wiping his glasses, his eyes red as he read the messages. "They can't hide anymore," he said quietly. Clara's phone rang and she answered, her voice calm as she spoke to a reporter. "Yes, the evidence is real. Yes, we will be pursuing justice." That night my parents called. The first call was Dad, his voice shaking, trying to sound calm. "Haley, sweetheart, let's talk about this. You can't believe everything Lily says." I didn't answer, letting his words hang in the silence before I ended the call. The second call came an hour later, Mom's voice sharp and cold. "You've ruined us. We could sue you for defamation. You think you're so powerful, but you're still our daughter." I hung up again, pressing the phone to the table, letting the buzzing continue until the battery died. The next morning, the courthouse steps felt cold under my shoes as we walked up, the air thick with the buzz of cameras and whispers. Lily held my hand, her grip tight, her steps small but steady. Clara walked ahead, calm, her briefcase in hand, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Mr. Howard stayed close to Lily's other side, a quiet wall of support. Inside, we sat at the table, the judge's bench looming, the air cold, the clock ticking loud in my ears. I could feel Lily's fear in the way her hand shook, so I squeezed it, leaning in. "You're not alone anymore," I whispered. When it was her turn, Lily stood, her voice trembling as she described the years of being locked outside, the screaming, the threats, the bruises, the nights she cried herself to sleep. Her tears fell, but she didn't stop, her voice growing steadier with each word. I watched her, pride and pain flooding my chest, the promise I made to her ringing clear in my mind. I saw Dad's face pale, his hands shaking. Mom wouldn't look at us, her eyes fixed on the table, her lips tight. When Lily finished, she looked at me, her eyes shining with tears, her shoulders shaking. I stood and wrapped my arm around her, holding her close as the courtroom fell silent. The judge's voice filled the room, clear and final. Lily was free, granted protection, allowed to live her life without their interference. Charles and Vanessa were fined, ordered to pay for Lily's therapy and medical costs, their reputations shattered, their power over us broken. Lily turned to me, tears falling, and I pulled her into my arms, holding her as the weight of 19 years lifted from both of us, leaving only the promise of freedom behind. As we stepped out of the courtroom, the cold Portland air hit my face, sharp and clean like a promise. Lily held onto my arm, her steps unsteady, her eyes puffy from crying but clear in a way I hadn't seen in years. She glanced up at me, a small shaking smile on her lips. "They can't hurt me anymore," she whispered. I nodded, swallowing the tightness in my throat. "No, they can't." Across the street, reporters stood with cameras, their lenses pointed at us, flashes popping like distant fireworks. I shielded Lily slightly, with my arm guiding her toward Clara's car as Mr. Howard walked beside us, his hand steady on Lily's back. A notification buzzed on my phone and I glanced down, seeing the headlines rolling in. Parents exposed for years of abuse. Survivors' evidence leads to court victory. Community rallies behind sisters seeking justice. Lily read over my shoulder, a tear slipping down her cheek. "They believe us," she said softly. "They do," I replied, squeezing her hand. "They finally see the truth." Clara unlocked the car, helping Lily into the back seat while I climbed into the front, the leather cold beneath me. As Clara started the engine, Lily's phone buzzed in her hand. She checked it, her face paling. "It's them," she whispered. "Block the number," I said calmly. She hesitated, her thumb hovering before she pressed the screen and blocked the number. Her shoulders shook with a small choked sob. "It's really over, isn't it?" she asked. I turned in my seat, meeting her eyes. "It's over." The drive back to Mr. Howard's house was quiet, the winter light fading, the streets lined with bare trees. Lily rested her head against the window, her eyes drifting closed, exhaustion pulling at her now that the fear was gone. Mr. Howard was waiting on the porch when we arrived, the porch light glowing above him like a beacon. He opened his arms and Lily stepped into them, letting him hold her as she cried softly into his shoulder. "You're safe now, Lily," he murmured, his voice low and steady. "You're home." Inside, Clara spread the final documents across the kitchen table, Lily's name clear on the protective order, the court seal shining under the lamp. The official letter demanding Charles and Vanessa pay for Lily's therapy costs and damages lay beside it, signed and stamped. Lily sat down, her fingers brushing over the papers, tracing her name. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. I shook my head, sitting beside her. "You saved yourself, Lily. You held on." She reached for my hand, gripping it tightly. "Because you promised me you would come back." "And I did," I whispered, my voice thick. That night Lily fell asleep on the couch, wrapped in one of Mr. Howard's old blankets, the soft glow of the lamp illuminating her peaceful face. I watched her breathe, the rise and fall of her chest steady, the nightmares finally silenced. I stepped outside onto the porch, the cold air filling my lungs, my breath fogging in front of me. I pulled out my phone, seeing the dozens of missed calls from numbers I recognized but no longer feared. Charles and Vanessa had called, texted, even left voicemails, pleading first, then threatening, then begging again. I scrolled through the messages, reading each one before deleting them, my thumb moving steadily, each swipe a release from their hold. At the last message, I paused. It was from Mom. "We're still your parents. You can't do this to us." I looked up at the cold, clear night sky, the stars sharp above the dark outlines of the trees, and felt the weight of their words dissolve. Slowly, I typed back, my fingers steady. "You have no power over us anymore." I hit send and turned off the phone, sliding it into my pocket. I stepped back inside, closing the door gently, the warmth of the house wrapping around me as I looked over at Lily, safe and sleeping. I knew as I watched her that for the first time in our lives we were truly free. Seattle woke to soft, golden light pouring through the windows, painting the hardwood floors in quiet warmth. Lily stood in the kitchen, her hair tied up, wearing an oversized sweatshirt as she carefully measured coffee grounds into the filter. The rich scent filled the apartment, mixing with the crisp morning air drifting in from the half-open balcony door. "Morning," I said, stepping into the kitchen, my voice still rough from sleep. She turned, a small smile on her lips. "Morning." I made coffee. I poured myself a mug, the warmth seeping into my hands, and leaned against the counter, watching her as she added cream to her, stirring slowly. She looked different already. Her shoulders weren't curled in fear, her eyes clearer, her movements calmer. "You sleep okay?" I asked. Lily nodded, taking a sip. "Better than I have in years." We took our mugs to the small table by the window, sitting across from each other as the city below came alive with the sounds of buses and footsteps, dogs barking in the distance. "I signed up for classes," she said softly, setting her mug down. "Just part-time to start." Pride bloomed warm in my chest, and I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "I'm proud of you." "I want to finish high school," she continued, her voice growing steadier. "Then maybe I can get a job at a bookstore or something." "You can do anything," I said, meaning every word. Later that week, Lily came with me to Evergreen Development, sitting quietly in the corner of the conference room as I led a meeting, her notebook open on her lap. She watched as I discussed projects, budgets, timelines, her eyes following every word, her pen tapping lightly as she took notes. Afterward, as we stepped into the elevator, she looked up at me, her eyes wide. "You're really good at this." I laughed softly, nudging her shoulder. "Takes one to know one." We spent our evenings cooking simple meals together, laughing over burned toast and spilled rice, music playing low in the background as the city lights twinkled through the windows. Sometimes we sat on the balcony with blankets around our shoulders, the cool Seattle breeze brushing our faces as we shared stories we had been too scared to tell before. One evening, the Fosters came to visit Maria, pulling Lily into a hug so tight it made her laugh. Thomas ruffling her hair before helping carry in a homemade pie. Dinner was warm and loud, the table crowded with plates and laughter. Maria telling stories about the cafe, Thomas joking about Lily's new big city life. Lily's laughter rang out clear and bright as she leaned against Maria's shoulder, her face flushed with happiness. After they left, I stepped onto the balcony, the air cool against my skin, the lights of Seattle blinking in the night. I closed my eyes, letting the wind move through my hair, the weight of the past finally loosened from my chest. Behind me, Lily stepped out, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders as she joined me. We stood in silence, side by side, watching the city we now called home. She glanced at me, a small, soft smile on her lips. "We're okay now, aren't we?" I turned to her, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Yeah, Lily. We're okay." And for the first time, I knew it was true. Lily leaned against the railing, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders as the breeze moved softly through her hair. The city lights reflected in her eyes, bright and alive. "I want to try working at the bookstore down the street," she said, her voice careful but filled with hope. I smiled, nodding. "You should. I think you'd love it." She looked down at the streetlights, her fingers drumming softly against the metal. "I'm scared, but I don't want to be scared forever." "You won't be," I said, stepping closer, resting my hand over hers. "Fear doesn't get to control you anymore." Lily turned to me, her eyes shimmering under the soft glow of the balcony light. "Do you ever feel guilty?" For leaving, I let out a slow breath, looking out at the skyline, remembering the nights I couldn't sleep, wondering if I had done the right thing, if I had abandoned her. Sometimes, I admitted. "But I know now that leaving was the only way to come back for you." She nodded, her grip on the railing, loosening, her shoulders dropping as if a weight slipped off her back. "I'm glad you did." Inside, the warmth of the apartment wrapped around us as we stepped back in. We spent the evening folding laundry. Lily humming along to the quiet music playing from the speaker, her voice small but steady. The next morning, Lily left for her first therapy appointment, clutching the notebook she had started writing in, again pages filled with poems, sketches, and her dreams. I watched from the window as she climbed into the car with Maria, who turned back to give me a reassuring thumbs up before driving her away. I spent the morning at Evergreen Developments, reviewing plans, signing papers, and meeting with my team. For the first time, the work felt lighter, my steps less heavy as I moved from meeting to meeting, the shadows of the past no longer clinging to my shoulders. At lunch, Maria sent me a photo of Lily smiling outside the therapy office, her hair pulled back, her eyes brighter. I stared at the photo for a long time, letting the pride and relief wash over me. That evening, the Fosters came for dinner, the small apartment filled with the scent of garlic and fresh bread as Maria cooked. Lily laughed as she helped Thomas set the table, her laughter ringing through the kitchen warm and clear. After dinner, Maria pulled Lily into a hug, holding her close. "Your family, Lily," she whispered, kissing the top of her head. "You always will be." Lily's eyes glistened, but she smiled, hugging Maria back. "Thank you." Later, as the night settled in, Lily and I stood on the balcony again, the city quiet beneath us, the air cool against our skin. She leaned against me, resting her head on my shoulder, and we stood there letting the silence hold us. "Haley," she said softly, "thank you for coming back for me." I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. "Thank you for holding on." She looked up at me, her eyes clear, her smile soft. "We're really free now, aren't we?" I looked out at the lights, the soft hum of the city, a gentle promise around us. "Yes, Lily," I said, letting the truth settle between us. "We're free." If you've ever had to leave your family just to live, remember this: you are not ungrateful. You are surviving. You deserve freedom and love. Share your story with me. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next powerful story.